In a city where justice wears a crooked badge and silence walks beside power, a one storyteller invites you to witness the story they never wanted you to see. A story of truth buried beneath pavement cracks, until one moment shattered the silence. The day rose quiet over Halden Street, draping the city in a silver hush. Pigeons scattered above the rooftops, their wings slicing the morning mist, while the sun filtered through the haze like a secret whispered too softly to catch. Jasmine Carter moved with care. One hand pressed gently against the round swell of her belly, the other gripping a paper bag filled with essentials: rice, apples, a half loaf of bread, and prenatal vitamins she could barely afford. The sidewalk beneath her feet was uneven, fractured by years of neglect. Each crack a reminder of how little this neighborhood was seen, how often it was forgotten. Yet Yasmin's steps were sure. Every footfall echoed quiet hope, each breath a silent promise to the life growing inside her. She walked past shuttered stores, past a child drawing stars in sidewalk chalk, past eyes that looked down, not because they didn't see her, but because they feared they might. Jasmine carried more than groceries. She carried resilience, passed down from women who had endured too much and loved too hard to give up. Her back ached, and the morning nausea hadn't yet faded, but she moved like someone who'd learned to survive pain without flinching. At the corner, she paused, adjusting the weight of her belly and smiling at the small kick inside her. And just across the street, a police cruiser idled. Officer Ryan Maddox inside, tapping a finger on the steering wheel, eyes narrowing beneath dark aviators. He didn't see Jasmine. Not really. He saw a silhouette in a neighborhood he didn't respect. And in that moment, the quiet morning began to curdle. The paper bag slipped first, teetering in her hand as one heel caught on a jagged edge of sidewalk. Jasmine gasped, falling to her knees as oranges spilled and the bread rolled into the gutter. Her hand flew to her stomach, heart pounding. Behind her, tires screeched. Maddox's cruiser stopped. He was out in an instant, barking orders before his boots hit the pavement. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped, towering over her as she tried to gather her things. Jasmine lifted her head, voice trembling. "Please, I just tripped. I'm pregnant." Her words barely escaped her lips before he stepped forward. "You people always got excuses." Without warning, his boot lashed forward, striking her ribs. Her scream tore through the air, sharp and raw, rising above the sirens, the birds, the morning stillness. Jasmine crumpled sideways, both arms instinctively wrapped around her stomach. Tears streaked her cheeks as the pain radiated inward, burning and breathless. Maddox stepped back, lips curled in disgust, and spat on the ground beside her like she was filth, like she was nothing. Like she was nothing. "Next time, don't loiter," he muttered, turning his back. Somewhere, a baby started crying in the distance, and 3 stories above, behind a dusty window, a pair of old eyes blinked into focus, and the camera began to roll. The apartment hadn't changed in years. Dust floated in the weak sunlight, slanting through the blinds, catching on the framed photos of long-gone faces and landscapes foreign to this part of the city. War zones and mountains, refugee camps and presidential rallies. Miles Bennett sat still in the worn leather armchair near the window, a half-drunk mug of tea on the floor beside him, its steam long vanished. The hum of the city below was distant and unremarkable, just a low static he'd grown used to. Nothing surprised him anymore. Not the shouting at 3 a.m., not the sirens, not the glass breaking on weekends. But he knew that the sirens, not the glass breaking on weekend, it had all become background noise in a life too quiet for the man he once was. He hadn't touched his cameras in years. Not since Angela died. Not since the world stopped making sense in ways that words and images couldn't fix. He used to believe in the power of a photograph, to stir hearts, to ignite truth, to change the course of things. But after the headlines moved on and the people didn't, he'd packed away that faith with the rest of her clothes. Now he watched life from a distance, numb, as if waiting for it to end, until that scream. It sliced through the still morning. Not just sharp, but wrong, unnatural in a way that roused something instinctual in him. He looked up, half expecting it to be another argument gone too far, another fight over nothing. But what he saw rooted him in place. A woman, pregnant and curled on the ground, arms wrapped tight around herself, groceries strewn like casualties. And above her, a man in uniform, walking away with deliberate calm. No sirens, no backup. Just the deliberate violence of a man who knew he wouldn't be held accountable. His chest tightened. He squinted. That wasn't just any woman. That was Jasmine, the girl who waved at him each Thursday morning from the bus stop, who once offered him a paper bag with 2 slices of cornbread and a smile. He had always nodded politely, said thank you, but never asked her name, never thought he needed to. His fingers reached for the strap of the camera before his mind fully caught up. It was there, leaning against the wall in the hallway, where it had gathered dust beside a box of Angela's letters. It felt heavier than he remembered. The fingers fell. And the words have been here and slipped here. Oh, it scares me. What has it done? His hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from the weight of what this meant. He lifted the lens, zoomed in. The cop's face came into sharp focus. His badge glinted like a threat. Miles hit record. He caught the tail end of the assault, the stomp, the woman's final cry, the way Maddox spat beside her like she was waste. Every instinct in him came rushing back. Angles, light, composition. But more than that, rage. Kept filming, didn't speak, didn't blink. When the officer turned to leave, Miles caught every second. How casually he dusted off his gloves. How he didn't even look back. How he moved like a man who'd done this before. Only once the cruiser drove off did Miles lower the camera. Jasmine hadn't moved much. A few people stood at the corners, hesitant. No one dared approach. The unspoken rule of the neighborhood. Survive first, speak later. He felt sick. Not because of what he'd witnessed, but because he had almost done nothing. Just a second slower, and he would have let the moment fade into silence, just like so many others had. He backed away from the window and sat on the couch, holding the camera in both hands like something sacred. He rewound the footage, watched it once, twice, then closed his eyes. Angela's voice rang. Hi, hi, hi. Angela's voice rang in his memory. Don't just capture the world. Confront it. He opened his laptop, logged into an email account he hadn't used in over a year, scrolled through contacts until he found one he thought had long stopped caring. Maya James, an editor at the City Journal, who once offered him a position he turned down after Angela got sick. His email was short. Subject: footage. Police assault on pregnant woman. Holden, St. Maya. I have something you need to see. No spin, no filters, just truth. This has to go out. No delay. I want it clean. I want her name known. Don't protect him. Call me. He attached the footage, pressed send. And then he sat in the quiet, feeling something crack inside him. Not sorrow, not despair. Something older, something closer to purpose. His phone buzzed within minutes. Maya's voice was sharp, urgent, emotional in a way she usually kept locked behind newsroom walls. Miles, my God, this is real? As real as it gets. I can have it up in an hour, but this will blow up. You know that, right? He didn't hesitate. I'm counting on it. She paused. You sure you're ready for this again? No, but she didn't ask for this, and no one's going to silence her pain. He ended the call. Downloaded a backup of the footage to 3 different hard drives, printed a still from the video, the frame where Jasmine looked up, face crumpled in pain, yet defiant. He pinned it beside the photo of Angela, as if to say, "This is why we keep going." Below, the street was stirring, people moving faster now, sirens in the far distance. He knew the footage would be online before noon. He knew it would spread. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was, through cracked lips and a voice made hoarse by pain, spoke at a press conference just 3 days later. Standing before a sea of microphones, she steadied herself, trembling slightly as her unborn daughter shifted inside her. "I am not broken," she said. "I am not your mistake to erase. I am a mother, and this baby will not grow up in fear." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. She stared into the cameras and refused to let the moment pass into forgetfulness. The backlash came with venom. Within a day of the press conference, Maddox's attorneys released a statement framing him as a dedicated officer facing unjust scrutiny, citing vague reports of suspicious behavior from Jasmine, none of which existed. Old mugshots of unrelated individuals were spread online under her name. Anonymous voices questioned her character, her motives, even the legitimacy of her pregnancy. Social media turned into a battlefield, but Jasmine stood taller. The bruises on her body had darkened, yes, but they had not weakened her. Each smear tactic added a new flame to the fire growing around her name. At night, she slept with one hand on her belly and the other curled around a note Miles had sent. "I see you now. Don't let them look away." Meanwhile, Officer Maddox, still suspended, not yet charged, was embraced by right-wing commentators as a victim of woke hysteria. Interviews surfaced. He painted himself as the man forced to act. But the footage told a different story. One no excuse could whitewash. It had no soundtrack, no edits. Just a woman, a boot, and a scream that refused to die. Jasmine's community rallied tighter. Black mothers who had been ignored for years now stood behind her. Faith leaders held vigils. A mural appeared overnight, her face beside her unborn child, beneath bold red letters. "We will not be kicked into silence." Even as threats came, she did not retreat. She began to speak at gatherings, carefully, with breath stolen between contractions, and Miles captured every word, every moment, his camera now an extension of her voice. Together, they refused to let her story dissolve into another forgotten headline. The courtroom buzzed with a silence heavy as stone. Reporters lined the back wall, their pens poised, cameras aimed. But it was Jasmine's quiet entrance that shifted the air. Dressed in a soft navy dress that clung gently to her still pregnant form, she moved slowly, each step deliberate, steady. She sat, eyes forward, facing the man who had stolen her breath and nearly her child. Maddox wore his uniform like armor, expression blank, coached into neutrality by lawyers who called him disciplined and misunderstood. But when the footage played, her body collapsing, her cry echoing, No legal spin could blur what was plainly seen. Jasmine took the stand. She spoke not of rage, but of fear, of dignity, of the moment she thought she'd lost everything. "You didn't see me as human," she said, her voice trembling. "But I refuse to disappear." Even the jury shifted. Then Miles, quiet and composed, offered his testimony. "I spent years watching injustice across oceans," he said. "But this was 3 stories beneath my feet. Deliberation took 12 hours. The city waited, holding its collective breath, while candles burned on street corners and strangers prayed in quiet unison." "You said it yourself." The city waited, holding its collective breath, while candles burned on street corners and strangers prayed in quiet unison. When the jury returned, the courtroom tensed, every gaze locked on the 4-person's lips. "Guilty on all counts." A tremor passed through the room like wind through tall grass. Maddox's face, once unreadable, cracked for the first time, his eyes narrowing, jaw tight, as he was led away in handcuffs, the badge now absent from his chest. Outside, the crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in release. Strangers embraced. Tears ran down cheeks that had seen too much disappointment. Jasmine stood silently at the courthouse steps, one hand over her stomach. Cameras clicked, but no one spoke. It wasn't just victory, it was the first breath of something new. A ripple had begun, and though Jasmine didn't smile, her eyes, wet, tired, fierce, said everything. Rain tapped gently on the hospital windows the morning Jasmine gave birth. The room was quiet but full, of breath, of memory, of unseen hands that had held her through fire. She gripped the bed rails as a final contraction surged through her. And then, at last, there she was. A daughter, pink-skinned and wailing, full of life and sound. Jasmine wept, not from pain, but from the overwhelming weight of arrival. She named her Hope, whispering the word like a sacred vow. Nurses swaddled the baby and placed her on Jasmine's chest, where tiny fingers curled instinctively around her mother's. Down the hall, Miles stood waiting, camera in hand, unsure if he should enter. But Jasmine called him in with a glance. He stepped closer, eyes glistening. "She's perfect," he murmured. Jasmine smiled, her voice raw with wonder. "She's free." They sat in silence as Hope blinked toward the ceiling, already seeing a world her mother had changed before she even opened her eyes. Months passed, and Jasmine's face became a symbol far beyond city limits. She stood before schools, churches, and courts, not as a victim, but a survivor turned advocate. She helped launch a foundation for mothers affected by police violence, offering shelter, legal aid, and the simple power of being heard. Miles followed with his lens, documenting lives transformed by her courage. Together, they built the Witness Project, an independent media platform where untold stories found light. The first story featured was Jasmine's, uncut, unedited, just truth, steady and searing. At a gallery opening, a young girl stared at the mural of Jasmine and her daughter and whispered, "She looks like my mom." Jasmine, watching from across the room, wiped a tear in the echoes of that child's voice, in the fire of her own healing. She knew. Silence had lost. This has been another unforgettable journey, with a one-storyteller, where truth cuts deep and stories leave scars that heal. If Jasmine's courage moved you, let the world know. Like, comment, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that demand to be heard, because when stories like this are told, justice is no longer invisible.